every week we've got news that's terrible for Joe Biden, but listen, we're not the ones who create the news. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. What have we got? From a brand new New York Times Siena poll, says if the 2024 election were held today, who would you vote for if the candidates were Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Donald Trump at 48%. Joe Biden, 43%. 10% say they don't know and or refused to answer. But the next one really delves into so many of the problems that Biden faces with various different groups. Trump has a +4 lead. Amongst men, Trump has a +7 lead. This one actually takes skill. Amongst women, Trump has +1 lead. That's never happened before when Donald Trump was on the ballot. Amongst whites, Trump +11. Amongst Hispanics, Trump +2. Amongst blacks, it says Biden +51. However, Krystal, that could be deceiving because you're actually supposed to be leading by 70 amongst black Americans. You're not supposed to be leading by 50. I've talked here before. If just 10% of the black vote goes differently, then Republicans would win some 300 something votes in the Electoral College. Now, amongst rural voters, Trump +32. Suburban, Biden +3. That's a bad number. You actually should be winning that by much more. Urban voters, Biden +28. So basically amongst every demographic subgroup, Biden is underwater, where he's either underwater or not leading by the margins that he needs to amongst very critical parts of the Democratic coalition. And this isn't just a single poll that we have here. The Wall Street Journal basically confirming these results the same day. If we can go to the next one there, please, and we can show everyone. Here, even in a 5-way race where you've got everybody from RFK Jr. to Cornel West and Jill Stein on the ballot, Trump is at 40%. Biden is at 35%. So it's becoming clear here that while Trump will lose some support but from the third-party candidates, RFK Jr. getting 9%, Cornel West at 2%, and Jill Stein at 1%, a lot of that support, Krystal, is bled from Joe Biden, at least enough to continue the Trump lead in a general election that would include all of them there. And then not to mention, everyone's like, well, RFK, will he get the ballot or not? Well, he's already on Arizona and Georgia, or at least he has enough ballots to get on Arizona and Georgia. That could be enough, honestly, to swing the entire thing. That's it. You only need a couple percent.
It is important to note, I'm sure he's going to face all kinds of lawsuits, so there's no guarantees that he'll be on the ballots in even those states. But there's no doubt that he's a problem for Joe Biden. Jill Stein is likely to be on the ballot in basically every state. That's a problem for Joe Biden, even if you're talking about 1 or 2% difference. But I mean, even without them, he's losing easily without them. And historically, now things may be different now, we don't know, but usually Trump support is actually understated. So we've never been in a situation either with Hillary Clinton or with Joe Biden where the Democratic candidate was behind Trump. And consistently, this isn't just like one poll that's an outlier. It's poll after poll after poll that shows Donald Trump beating Joe Biden. If you dig into more of the numbers on that New York Times Siena poll, what comes out is a trend that we've been tracking for a long time, which is so-called Class D alignment, where historically you have non-white, in particular, working class voters going overwhelmingly for Democrats. And that's not the case any longer in this poll. And that's the place where Joe Biden seems to be bleeding the most support. So they say in this write-up of the New York Times poll that Mr. Biden won 72% of non-white, non-college voters in 2020, providing him with a nearly 50-point edge over Trump. Now that edge is down to just 6 points, 47% to 41%. So what was a 50-point edge for Joe Biden and the Democrats among non-college, non-white voters is now down to a 6% edge. To be honest with you, Saagar, looking at the numbers among these different demographic groups, I'm like, how is he even as close to Trump as he is? That you are losing women to Donald Trump?
That's crazy.
The modern era of politics has been defined by a huge gender gap, with women going significantly
usually
towards
+10 or 11.
Democrats and men going towards Republicans. Not so, according to this poll. Now, again, it's not an outlier, okay? Now, maybe some of these demographic groups, you could say, okay, well, maybe it's a small sample size. Other polls show a different picture with regard to these demographic groups. But especially with regard to non-white, non-college voters, this is a trend we've been tracking for a long time, and it spells doom for Joe Biden and the Democrats if this is what things actually look like on Election Day.
Yeah, so what we could see very clearly is flashing warning signs across the entire electorate. Also, I feel like we glossed over Hispanics. Trump +2 amongst Hispanics. Anybody want to tell me? I mean, this is a group where George W. Bush was considered the most successful Republican amongst Hispanics because he won 40% of the vote, of the Hispanic vote, in the year 2000. It had never topped really that. Roughly, Trump came within 30-some%, including the South Texas, like Laredo swing. But for him to actually get now, it seems 50, at the very least, what I have seen is that the vast majority of this number is likely Hispanic men. And this actually tracks across all male groups, both black and Hispanic, is that you're not only seeing class de-alignment, unfortunately, and I did a whole monologue on this, you're actually seeing a lot of gender de-alignment as well, where a lot of men are starting to vote Republican, or at least identifying more with the right, and then women identifying more with the left. Now, we're going to show you, though, some of the cope. So here, let's put this up on the screen. We have Obama's former campaign manager, Jim Messina. He says, NYT chases headlines while ignoring what's happening. Trump consistently underperforms and Biden overperforms in primaries. In New Hampshire, Trump 7 points worse poll than result. In South Carolina, -8. Michigan, -10. Best predictor of elections equals how voters vote, and they are voting for Dems and for Biden. Well, here's what he forgets, folks. Primary voters are not general election voters, number one. Now, he's not wrong that it's not something to look at, but that is not in any way, as I understand it, Krystal, primary voter turnout is not a good predictor at all of eventual general election turnout. And in fact, the smart point that he would have made is not about this. It would be about all the slew of special elections and the midterms that we have. Because really, that's the only thing saving them. Well, the only thing saving them is that the polls were totally wrong in 2022. Every special election, Democrats have overperformed. And that's it. So just don't believe them. I mean, that's a tough sell, given what we have here. But they have a point. We know it would be stupid it would be stupid to discount it.
Yeah.
But this is ridiculous, whatever this nonsense is.
Yeah. Well, put the next one up on the screen. There's actually a response to him from another Obama era person, John Favreau here, Pod Save Bro. He says, wise words from Dan Pfeiffer, another Pod Save Bro. Instead of dismissing the polls, we should embrace the idea Trump can win this election and then use that frightening notion to re-energize the anti-MAGA majority that delivered victories in 18, 19, 22, 22, and 23. Telling people what they want to hear may be satisfying in the short term, but it rarely works out. So they're saying, like, jiu-jitsu move, use the fact that we're down in the polls actually as a motivator. And you actually had on Morning Joe, another one of Biden's favorite programs, apparently, distressingly, you had Donnie Deutsch saying basically the way Democrats need to go about trying to win is by scaring the hell out of people about Donald Trump, effectively. And that's really the only thing they ever try to do, right? They don't try to offer people anything. They don't try to really make an affirmative case. They are still banking on going back to that same old playbook of, yes, but Trump. So you may be pissed off about X and Y and Z, but Trump, so you got to stick with us and you got to vote for us. And I mean, yeah, it worked for them in 2022. It worked for them in 2020 well enough. But those margins have been very thin. And these polls, you cannot look at them and not think that they have a very, very big problem on their hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so obvious whenever you see it. And I think a lot of what it flashes as well, Krystal, is Biden's age is just such an intense, it is such an intense factor for so many voters. And it's one of those where the media, is forced to cover it every once in a while. Whenever the special counsel is like, yeah, he didn't remember when his own son died in an interview. Yeah. And then he's like, well, how dare he bring that up? And then they're like, well, according to the transcript, you brought it up, sir. And then you weren't able to remember it. It's unfixable. And so when you have an unfixable, glaring problem, which everybody on earth, can understand and empathize with a voter as to why they wouldn't want to vote for him. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, geez, this man needs to go immediately. I can't imagine him in there for another 4 years. But then you add on all of the attendant chaos of Israel, the economy. I mean, there's, immigration. Like, if we look at the issue by issue polling, immigration is his lowest approval rating. Gaza's number 2, actually.
Yeah.
And then the economy number 3. Each of those are so highly determinative for the way that both independents and others who very rarely vote or who may not come out to vote may find it in themselves. They're simply unable to vote for you. And then age, I think, just pushes you over the edge. So there's major warning signs here. And especially here, thing with Trump, as we covered today, as we covered in our last show, Trump has now successfully pushed the vast majority of his trial dates either very close to the election day or possibly after the election day.
Yeah.
So the worst issue for him may actually not even come before people actually cast votes. So combine those two factors, things are looking good right now for Trump.
Let me also say one thing about immigration, because they had their like dueling border visits last week, and Joe Biden was like, I call on Donald Trump to work with me on a bipartisan, border security bill. And it's like, you're putting the morality of that aside, so you guys can go back and watch Saagar's debate on immigration if you're hungry for that content at the moment. I don't have the energy, but your whole case is supposed to be that Trump is so awful that we cannot have another 4 years of that. And core to that case from Democrats has always been about his basically fascism at the border. And now you're like, you know what? We're going to compete with him. We want to work with him on the fascism at the border. And, we also want to like keep the kids in cages, and we're just as horrible and cruel as the Republicans. It's like, what kind of, and they think this is some kind of an own. It's like, no, you have just accepted the entire Republican messaging around immigration. And so how are you supposed to, your whole tactic is like to scare people about Donald Trump. And I think there are some legitimate things, by the way, to be scared about a second Trump term. But on one of the issues that he was the most extreme, the most aggressive about, you're going to just go ahead and accept his case and reach out a hand to work with him on implementing those policies? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And so, to me, yet another political fail. And as you were just alluding to, Saagar, the problems for the Democratic Party and for Joe Biden go so far beyond any one demographic group. And in fact, some of the biggest issues are with their own base, which we're going to show you in a minute, that they're apparently terrified of even setting foot on a freaking college campus because of Israel protests, which, you have a lot of not just young people, but a lot of people who are saying, morally, I think that this is a genocide, and morally, I just cannot pull the lever for someone who I believe is funding and supporting a genocide that's happening right now in front of my eyes on social media.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.